So in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about 11 character traits of a multi-million dollar deal maker. And this is based on my experience of negotiating with multi-billion dollar law firms, which I have. I've met several multi-million dollar business owners, and I've also met bankers that have financed over $600 million deals. This is one banker that I'm talking about. And my business partners, some of them have advised on $13 billion bank merger. Few of them have raised hundreds of millions of dollars of capital for companies, and they have been in very sophisticated negotiations. And I've also met a guy who raised close to $1 billion, actually several guys who raised close to $1 billion, and I've negotiated with them as well. So this is based on real life experience. And now my clients are doing this also. So, by the way, if you're interested in learning how to acquire multi-million dollar companies in your region, reach out to me. I've got a mentorship program that I conduct both one-on-one and in a group format. If you like to know more about that, I'm offering one free consultation call where you and I can sit down and talk about what are the possibilities for you and how you can put yourself in a position of acquiring profitable multi-million dollar companies in your region. So if you're interested in that, click the link below, reach out to me on email or any of my social media accounts. Now back to the video. So this is based on real life experience. And I've also read a lot of books. I've done a lot of courses, including the Dan Peña's QLA Castle seminar and Dan Peña's QLA Hardcore seminar, where I met other deal makers. I've also studied books of Donald Trump, who's a mega deal maker, and he's also listed some of his rules. And I start to see patterns over and over again. So I've identified 11 character traits based on real life that I have observed in multi-million dollar deal making scenarios. These deals tend to be very complex, involving multiple decision makers, a lot of bureaucracy, technical language, and emotions. So these 11 character traits, understanding them will give you an advantage in business. So stick till the end and let's get started. Number one is million dollar deal makers open with a strong hand. They don't try to play an underdog. This is not about looking too relatable. In fact, they try to position themselves as being a little bit unrelatable. And you see this with President Trump and his motorcade, or during the deal making days in his business life. He had helicopters and planes. I also met a guy who was worth about 500 million pounds, and he bought a corporate jet just to do deals in them. And it's not uncommon for these big hitters to do deals in a corporate jet. And of course, I'm talking about very big ticket size here, 50, $100 million deals. This guy was buying hotels. He had deals with Hilton hotels. And he was showing me a video of how he did the deal in his private jet. So that's creating a perception. Now, I understand not everybody has a private jet or motorcade or helicopters and stuff like that, but there's always a version of it that you can play out. One simple thing that you can do is wear a three-piece suit, wear a pocket square, get an expensive suit. Instead of getting 4 or 5 suits, you can get one or two expensive suits, and you can wear that to your deals. Another thing that you could do is wear cufflinks. It can be a very powerful signal that you're giving out. So that's one thing, is how you look. Make sure you're well groomed, no piercings on your lips and all of that. It doesn't give a good impression. You're getting into the corporate world, and this is about million dollar deal making. You have to look the part. People have to perceive you in a serious light, that this guy is up to something. He's serious. He's not to be messed around. So a couple of examples of this. I was actually invited to negotiate with a $25 million healthcare company. This was a leading eye clinic in UAE. And we had a Zoom call where my CEO was there, who was a hospital CEO. And there was another guy who was a senior partner of PwC. Now, PwC is one of the big one of the largest accounting firms in the world. And one of the highest positions in that firm is a position called senior partner. So he was a senior partner of the firm. He had raised hundreds of millions. And then you had this guy who was the CEO of a major hospital, former CEO. And I opened very strong. I was in the suit. I had nice background, which is important. Image is extremely important. And we opened really well. And there were 4 shareholders who came on the meeting. It was just an introductory call, and then we were supposed to meet again. And the first meeting really went well. We did it amazing. And then I get a call from one of the shareholders, and they say, "Oh, that was a great meeting. Can we take you out for dinner?" And that's usually a good sign. That means you open strong. No negotiations have started yet. You just open strong. If you mess up at this part, you'll mess up the whole thing. So you have to open strong. That's one of the character traits, that they open with strength, that we are powerful and we are here to make a deal. So we have to create that image of power, right? So then they wanted to do that. So they invite me to Abu Dhabi. I go there and it's a nice 5-star hotel, one of the prominent ones. And they said, "You just come to the hotel and we have a meeting there at a conference room." I sit in the lobby, and one beautiful receptionist walks up to me and says, "Are you Mr. Prithvi Chauhan?" I said, "Yes." He says, "Are you from Vital Gates?" I said, "Yes." "Are you the founder?" "Yes." "Please follow me." And she escorted me to a conference room. Now, usually I was used to meeting business owners in their clinics and in their offices, but this is a much bigger group, and they booked a conference room. And I went there in the lobby. They had my name outside the conference room. It was a nice conference room, had a nice coffee machine, 4 shareholders, one guy who was the CEO, um, and they opened pretty strongly. And we started to talk. I shared my background, how I built this team together, how I structured a partnership with the billion-dollar CEO. Again, opening strong. This is just the open. Again, continuation of the open. So you have to open strong. That's rule number 1. Number 2, million-dollar deal makers have this character trait that they're able to control their emotions. Desperation and overexcitement are deal killers. There's a famous scene that Barbara from Shark Tank talks about with Donald Trump, in the business days. Now, you may like him or hate him, but he's a good deal maker. So, and he's made a lot of, powerful and fruitful deals. So, um, she said that he's the best salesman that I've ever seen. And she lists out this incident where some Chinese guys came to buy his apartments, and he would just show them around, and he just wouldn't sell the deal. He would show them around, "Oh, this is what we're going to do, and this is what's happening, and this is what's happening," and he won't sell the apartments. And Barbara said, she was a real estate agent at the time. She knew that Trump needed the money because he was in financial trouble at that time, but he didn't let his desperation show in the meeting. And that's something to learn from. So, and experienced deal makers will test you, and they'll test your patience, and they'll test if you can control your emotions over a long period of time. Anybody can fool anybody in a short period of time. So they'll test you over a long period of time. I was with a banker in Dubai, and we were looking to raise about $3.5 million to buy a company. And this guy, we were sitting in a restaurant, and this guy, we're talking about the deal, and he asks me, "How is your fish?" You know, now bear in mind, my girlfriend is waiting. I need to meet her afterwards. I have timelines that I need to fulfill. I have a board that I'm obligated to. I have my CFO who's waiting for my call after the meeting, what happened with the banker. I'm under a lot of pressure. And these people will test you to reveal any desperation. Because last thing you want a banker to know that you desperately need the deal. Because if the banker knows that you desperately need the deal, they will eat you for breakfast. So, and they'll ask you to give collateral, sign personal guarantee, and turn the deal against you. because you're so desperate to close the deal. You need money like you need air in your lungs. You don't ever want to put yourself in that position. And if you are in that position, you have to control your emotions. Because if you give that tell, it's going to be a problem. So you have to be ice cold, you have to be normal, and you have to be able to control your emotions. And this guy, he would talk about, oh, there's a nice cigar lounge. He starts to talk about a cigar lounge in the middle of a $1 million fundraiser. And he starts to talk about, there is a nice cigar and how you roll it and the smoke coming out and the view and all of this. And what he's trying to do is, as he's saying these things, he's looking at me. Am I going to cut him and jump into the conversation and bring the deal in over and over again on his face, almost like shoving it down his face? Or can I handle a conversation? Can I handle a banter? And this guy just kept wandering. And what he was looking to do, and he wasn't off track. Initially I thought he's off track. He wasn't off track. He wanted to see my reaction. He wanted to see how desperately do I want to close this deal. The more desperate I am, the more collateral he can get out of me. So these are cold-blooded deal makers. Don't ever be fooled if they ask you, how do you like the fish? Or if you mix it with that sauce, it'll taste good. I had another deal maker. This was a owner of a $3.5 million clinic. And we were at a nice restaurant. And he would start talking about the cheesecake or something else, other than the deal. When that happens, they're just checking you. They're just checking how desperately you jump onto the conversation and how much of a timeline you're on. Everybody is on a timeline. I'm sure he's on a deadline. His family is waiting at home. He needs to get back. He has patients waiting. He's a surgeon. So he doesn't have the time to talk about the fish or the kind of salt they use in the fish and all of this nonsense with somebody he barely knows. So it's a very strategically positioned conversation that's happening right there. And he's checking for if I lose control or not. So you have to be aware when that happens, and you can't lose control. Just stay relaxed, play along, joke a little bit, and come back on track very elegantly. Okay. Number three, this is having abundance of opportunities. How you not get desperate is by having abundance of opportunities. So most deal makers, they do this as a profession. It's not a one-off thing. At a minimum, they're working at many, many deals. And I remember one of the rules in Donald Trump's book was that it works at 10 to 20 transactions at a time. So he's not desperate, because either ways he's going to close one of them and he's going to make money. So you can't have too few opportunities. You have to have an abundance of opportunities. How do you get that? You make more phone calls. You don't stop calling people just because you found one deal or one prospect. You keep talking to people and have abundance of opportunities. So you have to have abundance of opportunities, otherwise you're going to be desperate. And he said that a lot of the people can go crazy when they're buying a hotel, and they can pay very crazy prices. And he said that many Chinese businessmen have overpaid 2 or 3 or 4 times than what the hotel was worth. And that happens because you visit the hotel, you see the lobby, you see the decor, you visualize yourself as being the owner, all the guests you would bring, the status, what that would do, all the women that you would impress, all the events that you would host, and what that would do for your other businesses. And all of a sudden, the value of that hotel in your mind starts skyrocketing, and you lose touch with the reality of the numbers. And you get too excited, and then all of that comes up at the negotiation table later on when you go in the conference room, and you can't even read the clauses that are stacked against you because you're too obsessed with the chandeliers and the hotels and the decors and the women. So you have to be a little bit careful. This happened with me, admittedly, when I visited this clinic, same clinic, $3.5 million, had Range Rovers outside, Rolls Royces, and this happened to be a cosmetic clinic. And it had some of the most beautiful women coming in, as patients. These women had millions of followers and influencers, and the seller actually was playing this on me. And I saw these women in the lobby as well, tall Norwegian models coming for cosmetic procedures, supermodels, right? So I started to see myself as the owner of this clinic who's catering to this premium clientele. Many royal family members came there. I always saw either a Porsche Range Rover or a Rolls Royce, and I visited the clinic a couple of times. So it tries to, it starts to mess with your head that, you know what, I'm going to be owner of this clinic, and then I'm going to be owner of 20 clinics, and then I'm going to be this and that. And another time this happened was when I saw the $10 million deal, and you see the numbers and you start seeing supercars. How you're going to finance a supercar, how you're going to finance a house, how you're going to start living in Burj Khalifa, how you're going to, start all of a sudden becoming this high status individual, and your mind can go crazy and you can get desperate. So when the deal gets pulled out of you, you will get desperate. So this happened. The owner of this company, after seducing me visually uh, and spending a few months, last minute he changed something in the deal, and all the fantasy of few months just popped, and the rug was pulled under my foot, and I didn't have a place to stand, and I was completely desperate because I had eased into too much of the idea of this fantasy. So you have to have an abundance of opportunities. Thankfully, I had talked to so many sellers that this $25 million business also contacted me, and I had the ability to switch the fantasy, at least, if not eliminate it, to a different deal. So have enough deals, have enough opportunities. You can't be locked into a very desperate position. And that happens when you have scarcity of opportunities. So, and this can happen even with your board members if you're buying companies. Anyway, so number four, ability to deal with bureaucracy. Okay. $1 million deals are not simple. Okay. This is a bureaucratic process. You have many decision makers. You have the owner, which is the decision maker, and you have the owner's wife, which you'll not meet in most cases. And she's kind of in the background. You have to be able to influence her through the owner. That's an art. The owner's children may be, influencing the owner's decision. Bankers. Typically, there are several bankers who make decisions. There's an analyst, there is an industry expert, and there is one guy who signs off on the deal. So you have multiple people there. So you need to get agreement from the owner and his family and his advisors. You need to get agreement from the bankers, and you need to manage your own business partners if you have them. And you have to manage this process simultaneously, and you have to bring things to close in a certain timely manner, and people can change their mind. There are legal agreements that are in place which tend to have a bureaucratic technical language, and there's a lot of bureaucracy. You may have to deal with license, changing of the license, so that's another aspect which is linked to the government, how to change licenses and all of that. So that you're dealing with that. Opening a bank account can be a bureaucratic process. So all you have around you in this kind of a deal making process is bureaucracy, and nobody can escape from it. The biggest deal makers, including Donald Trump, has gone through bureaucracy. He has said and written in his book that in some of his buildings, it took him 12 years to get a permit from a state, because it would go from one office to another, and approval one, approval two, and then he needs to get an environmental approval and a whole bunch of stuff. So you have to accept the bureaucratic nature of these business deals. There are a lot of parties involved, and you need to be able to sell to a lot of people on the same idea and get an agreement from them. And you have to be kind of willing to be jerked around a little bit, because you will be jerked around. Or go to this office, no, talk to this person, and this person they keep passing the buck. And that's the bureaucratic nature. Even to network with some of these companies, even to get access to the decision maker, takes a lot of phone calls. So you have to accept that this is part of the game. You can minimize it to an extent, but you're not dealing with a $5,000, $10,000 or $20,000 deal where one decision maker can sign off on the deal. You're dealing with multiple parties here. The bigger the transaction sizes, the bigger the bureaucracy. Historically, whenever there is power exists in a place, or anything valuable, it's always guarded with bureaucracy. around it. It could be family members, it could be ministers, it could be advisors. It doesn't matter what the form is, but wherever there is power, there is bureaucracy. You can even see this, and we learned about this in the dating days. In my dating days, when I was learning a lot about dating, you see this in clubs where some of the most valuable people are always behind these red velvet ropes, in guarded areas of tables, or in the most exclusive clubs that you can't get into, invite only. And you have to go through managers and a whole process. All of that's bureaucracy. You see this in UK with private members club. You have the Annabelles, or in Dubai you have the Arts Club, which is by invite only. So all of that's bureaucracy, which is around power. And you have to accept that the bigger the transaction sizes, the bigger the deal sizes, the more money, the more resources, the more value, the more bureaucratic nature will be around it, kind of guarding it. And these will be people with vested interest in that power who want to vet you before they let you in. So you have to be aware of that. Number 5, $1 million deal makers have the ability to read the room and assess power dynamics. So when you enter the situation, a room, you have to be able to read where the power is. Typically there's one guy. If you get that one guy, he influences everybody else. Kind of the king of the situation. And it's an underlying agreement that this person is king. This person doesn't say I'm a king, but this person has a power. This person has authority. And you can see signs. So when I would meet bankers, and I met a banker who dealt at the minimum, that department of the bank dealt at the minimum with $100 million ticket sizes. It's one of the biggest banks in UAE. And they finance very big companies and very big projects. And the whole team came in, and there were a couple of guys, and then there was one guy who was very silent. He had a cuffling, a fat tie, big collars, big lapel on the suit. Typically, they'll have a pocket square. Their office is different, so you can see the background. This person has a certain image. When this person speaks, there is a lot of power coming out of the voice. So that's another big tell. I always look at the voice. Voice is very hard to fake. You can try to modify it, but if you're not in a position of power, you're not going to have that power in the voice. So anybody who has authority and power in that office will have a powerful voice. And you can see this even with yourself. There are certain areas or environments where you have power, and there'll be a certain vocal projection that comes out. And you're like, oh, where did that come from? It's because you're seated in a position of power, and maybe you're not aware of it. So you can see this. So you have to be able to assess who are the key decision makers here. And I remember my CFO, who was also the senior partner of one of the big 4 accounting firms, he would ask me, what was your impression, Prithvi? And he would always want to test my judgment. And I would say that guy was the powerful guy. He wasn't talking much, but he holds the cards. And these guys were kind of the puppets who represented him. Another thing you will see is these guys sometimes will stay quiet. Not always, but they'll speak last. Another thing you will see is that the rest of the people will keep making eye contact with this person for approval. When you see that, when a person goes this, gives a presentation and looks like this, he's seeking approval from this person, and you know where the power is located. So you have to be able to read the room, and you have to know where the power lies. And then next thing is, I have to have a way to get an agreement with this person. And this person will be protected by the puppets. So be aware of that too, which is again linked to bureaucracy. Number 6, ability to facilitate agreement with multiple parties. So this is another dynamic with $1 million. $1 million deal making. When I say $1 million deal making, I'm talking about a business that you can buy. Okay. So, this a lot of the times may have multiple business partners. Not everybody has the, money to write a check and buy $1 million business. So there is fundraiser involved. There are government entities involved. There are lawyers involved, accountants involved. You may have a team involved. So you have multiple individuals that you have to manage. and you have to be able to sell one after the other. So you have to be able to manage multiple parties. And in very big deals, you see this again when Trump was buying hotels and he was raising hundreds of millions of dollars. He would raise it a lot of the times with multiple banks. So sometimes three banks would finance one deal, and it's called a syndicate. I think where multiple banks get involved. So you have multiple banks, and the bigger the company, the more decision maker, the more bureaucracy, and the more chain of commands. So you have to go through the gatekeepers, then you have to convince the shareholders. Here also in the banks, multiple gatekeepers in multiple banks, and you have to socialize the deal from within the board. So there's a lot of agreement you have to facilitate. So you need to have that ability to manage and juggle multiple people and their interest. Okay. Number 7, emotional stamina. As you can tell, all of this can be emotionally draining. You're spending a lot of time. You don't know if the deal is going to happen or not. The failure rate is high. You're working on many deals. One is getting busted. You're having an emotional response, almost like bleeding. It feels like you're bleeding. And then you have another deal. More opportunities are coming, and you can go out of control. So you have to have the emotional stamina and stability to understand this is a game. That's the mindset. You have to look at it as a game. Your survival can't depend on it. Your luxury can depend on it, but your survival has to be secured. Otherwise, you're going to get too affected and too emotional. So you need to have emotional stamina. A lot of this has very little to do with degrees or intellectual capabilities or qualifications. A lot of this stuff is about emotional stamina to keep pushing, to keep hammering. So that's a very important trait, emotional stamina. I remember Trump, he mentioned that some of the deals he waited for 12 years for it to happen. And he kept pushing, kept taking no's, kept taking rejections. The timing wasn't right. The market wasn't good. He couldn't raise money, and he would get rejected for fundraising. Imagine Trump. And then he would do it again. He would try to buy a company. The price was too high. There are too many competitors. He would have to go back, come back again. Again, but when I say waiting for 10 years, I don't mean that he wasn't doing anything. He would just switch his focus to other deals. But some deals took a long time, and that can happen too. So emotional stamina is a big one. Number 8, million-dollar deal makers thrive on complication. The more complicated the deal and technical the deal, the better. Why is that? Million-dollar deals are complicated, as you can tell. Complication is your shield against competition. Nobody wants to deal with complication. People want to go to a job, get paid, and have fun, and live a simple life and settle down on the countryside at the end of their life. That's what they want to do. They don't want to deal with bureaucracy. They don't want to deal with legal terminologies. They don't want to deal with complications. They don't want to deal with lawsuits. They don't want to deal with shareholder betrayal, political complications, and the deal structure, which can have various aspects, various scenarios that you can face. And shifting power, shifting loyalties, all of this stuff is complicated. If you don't want to deal with complication, building wealth is not for you. Wealth has complications, and it is very complicated. So that's your protection. You don't want it to be easy. Anytime I see something that's complicated and kind of like off-putting almost, I know that's an opportunity, because it's not just off-putting for me, it's off-putting for anybody. And Trump said in his book that you get paid to solve complicated problems as an entrepreneur. Do not get paralyzed when you see complications, when you see lawsuits in a company, when you see a whole bunch of stuff and a whole mumbo jumbo mess. Not always. Some of them are just bad deals. I'm not talking about the bad deals, but the good deals. They can have multiple shareholders. They may have disputes. Things can be complicated. Doesn't mean it's a bad deal, and you need to thrive on complication. Okay. So just me explaining these 11 character traits, some people can get put off, and click off the video and think, oh, this is not for me. Perfect. meaning people who are watching are going to benefit. So you don't want things to be too easy and too simple. You want people to have a confused eye. When people ask me what I do and I explain it, they get so confused. And I explain it and explain it, they get confused. I know I'm in the right spot because it's too complicated for them to understand, and that's the barrier to entry, which is great. Number 9, ability to read motivations of people. You have to be a bit of a mind reader. You have to know why somebody arrived at the negotiation table in the first place. Why is the banker talking to you? Why is the law firm partner talking to you? What is in it for him? Why is the board member on your team? Why is the seller wants to do a deal? Who is in the seller's life? What are their motivations? Because it's not just the seller, but everybody that's connected to that seller's environment you have to deal with. And everybody has a vested interest with this company. Companies take care of families. So it's not just one person who's the owner of the company. Every person that's in the immediate connection of that, every person in that family of that person is the decision maker. And you have to be able to understand their motivations. And this happened where one of the sellers, his son was supposed to go to Harvard and leave Dubai and was not supposed to inherit his clinic. But the moment he saw that his father was selling his clinic, all of a sudden he failed in his Harvard exam and he came in to influence the deal. And he did influence the deal last minute. So that's an example of somebody who was a hidden decision maker, somebody connected to the business owner that I did not calculate. So you have to be able to read motivations, not just of the person you see in front of you, but the people behind the shadows that are influencing the person sitting on the table. And typically these are immediate family members. It could be a relative who may be an accountant or a lawyer advising him. So be aware of hidden decision maker, and you have to account for the motivations of the person in front of you and everybody in their background. So just be aware of that. Um, Next, number 10, knowing when to walk away. There is a point where if you keep pushing, you know, you seem desperate and you lose power and you lose all the leverage you had built up at the beginning and you lose respect. So this happened where we were looking to raise about $3.5 million. There was a bank who had also provided us with a term sheet of $10 million to finance 70% of the $10 million deal. And it was an offer that they had given originally. And this was another deal which was small in size. And this particular department dealt with big tickets. So it wasn't in their mandate to finance this, but we were somehow trying to get to convince them. And what happened is that the banker said no. And one of my business partners at that time, and he's a very experienced guy, sadly, um, lost his control. And the moment he heard no, and some people that this word no can be a very strong trigger, he just went out of control because he had financial obligations that he was going to fulfill with this deal because he also was going to have a salary from the deal. Basically, he had financial obligations he could fulfill with the deal. And this guy, the moment the banker said, no, we can't do it, he went out of control. And he said, what do you need? Tell us, how can we make this work? Please, and he started to get on his knees almost. This is a 58-year-old guy. And the guy he was talking to was actually not that senior. He was influential within the bank, but he wasn't the top guy. We had met the top guy and he was mediating between them. And this guy should be respecting my partner. But the moment this guy came on his knees, this guy lost respect. And he started to almost start putting cards on the table. We can do personal guarantee and this and that. And, and the moment bankers see desperation, they just know they have you. And they'll just ask you for more and more collateral. They'll put you on the hook for as much as possible. And that's the impression I wanted to avoid in that presentation. But he just gave it away. He just gave the desperation away. And I told him to be in control. So afterwards, after the call, I talked to him and I said, I mean, once he says no, it's not in his mandate. We don't have to put ourselves on the knees. We're going to hurt ourselves. And he says, I'm sorry, Prithvi. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But you have to know when to walk away. There is a time where you can't push, you seem too desperate, and you leave. You close the door in such a manner that to reopen it, it's going to be embarrassing. And for all the future deals, it's this relationship is going to get affected. He's not going to finance it anyway, but he's going to know in the next deal that I can get more out of these people. Last time when I said no, these people caved and started to say things they shouldn't say. And I should probably say no and jerk them around a little bit, and they're going to get desperate. You don't want that. In a negotiation table, you want to always be willing to walk away, not just give an impression that you're going to be walking away, but actually doing it. There is a time, there is a boundary which you don't cross. You lose power, you lose authority. Just keep that in mind. Um, know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Sometimes you just don't have the cards, and you're in a weak position. You're pleading at the negotiation table. The guy has you by the neck. This is not the time to push. This is the time to push the person away from you, leave the table, come back when you have the cards. And I told him, my business partner, and I happened to fire him later on. I told this business partner, we'll come back. Don't worry about it. We'll find another deal. We'll find another banker. Maybe we'll close a deal. After that, we'll come back. Just let it go right now. Just let it go right now. And I kept saying, even on the call, let it go. It's okay. We'll speak later. I tried to indicate it, but he just got hooked on it. And that can happen with money. That can also happen with women, by the way. So be careful with that. Know when to walk away. And number 11 is never give up. Walk away from this deal. You can come back with a different structure. That's fine. Just because somebody said no doesn't mean you can't open the door. Just because one person said no doesn't mean it's all over. First time one seller, rejected the deal last minute, it cratered. I got so emotionally affected because that's the only opportunity I had. And I was so sad until, I thought it was the end of the world. I thought this is the only business that exists in entire UAE. And you can tend to fall into scarcity that this was my shot. You want to get rid of this thought that this is it, that this deal is it, or this person is it. There are many different persons that you can find, business partners, deals. It's not the end of the world. You can come back to it. And so never give up and be willing to walk away. So the moment this happened, the deal cratered, I found another deal, and another $25 million business wanted to have a conversation. And all of a sudden, you're back at the game. And once I talked to them, I went back to the seller where the deal had created with a different structure, a much better structure. So you can change things. You can meet again after a year, after a few months. It's fine, but as long as you stay the track, you never give up, you'll make it. Because there is a lot of moving parts here, if you can understand. There's bureaucracy, multiple decision makers, bankers. Sometimes the market is just not right. And you have to understand that this is not personal. It's not the end of the world. You're going to find another opportunity and you keep pushing. And deal making is a lifestyle. Losing a deal does not mean that you lost. Okay. You can always come back, never give up, keep talking to people. It's just one small setback in the large scheme of things. Have that attitude, have a long-term vision, and never give up. So that's the 11th character trait. If you like the video, hit that subscribe button and I'll talk to you soon.